Welcome back to another episode of the Thunderstock Show, collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property, just like the founding fathers would want it to be. Today's special guest is Ryan Hogan. He's the CEO of Talent Harbor. He's got quite a story, but for those of you that are only listening, I want you to feel this through your earbuds. He's got a mighty, mighty mustache. And for those of you that can see, welcome. Ryan, how's it going today? I want to ask you a first question, but first, how are things?
Good. We're getting after it. I appreciate you having me on, Ross. This is going to be a fun one.
I have been excited for this since we had our intro call probably a month ago. First question, as someone who's talked to you, knows you a little bit, I want to put myself in the shoes of your old guidance counselor from when you would have been in high school, hypothetically speaking. If you would have been in my office, what would you tell me you wanted to be when you grew up after school?
Yeah. Well, I knew, like, very specifically, I knew what I wanted to be. And so if you were sitting across from me and asking that question, what I would have said back then is I would have said, I'm going to fly jets off of aircraft carriers. What's interesting about that is the response that I probably would have gotten, because they would have had my transcript, obviously, in front during this conversation. And she would look and she would say, well, you're failing every class, and so that's not going to happen. And that's probably where the conversation would end, and I would get up and walk out.
I know of several Stockdales that were fighter pilots through the Navy and the Air Force. My grandfather was the Naval Academy. He went to be a fighter pilot. Take it from me, there's sometimes it's a blessing he didn't. He crash landed a plane. Another Stockdale was in Vietnam. Crash landed, was in POW camp for like almost 8 years. On one hand, there's the guidance counselor who's like, oh, play the safe route. Maybe be an accountant. Maybe go back to school and finish your classes. But the other hand is, it sounds like you're a traditional entrepreneur, wanted some adrenaline, high octane, didn't have anything to do with school. Love that. So what did you do after school?
Okay, just a quick sidebar, and just to riff on this real quick.
Let's riff.
Stockdale. I just went through the Stockdale Leadership Development Curriculum at the Naval War College last year. Ross Stockdale, you are related to the Stockdales?
So I have a grandfather. His name is Wendell. He has a brother. His name is Lowell. They all went to the Naval Academy. They have a cousin who didn't end up in that, family tree, that when they, were settling out west was in Illinois. It was James. James was the admiral, vice president. So I'm not like a direct descendant of him, but I mean, I have a grandfather that's the same age cohort, but did the same career track.
Got it. Yeah, that's awesome. What a small world. Okay. All right. Next question. Sorry, I just totally got us out of the grind on that.
You're good. So what did you do after high school? Did you end up, pursuing the planes, or how'd that go?
I did. So, but I couldn't go to the traditional route. My cousin had gone through the Naval Academy. And so, he was also like, hey, there's a real opportunity to go through Naval Academy. It's a prestige institution. You get paid for going. I mean, it's like, it is really,
it's a good deal.
It's incredible. I did not have the grades. Like, you have to have a letter from your congressman. I don't even think I could have gotten it through the door at congressman. So my only path that I saw to be able to go and fly jets is that, like, I had to prove myself in the Navy. And so I enlisted at the ripe age of 17. My mom signed the permission slip, I think, because she wanted me out of the house as well. So I think that's been like the story of my life. And so joined the Navy at 17. I was a helicopter crewman. So I flew in the back of MH-53 Echo helicopters doing mine countermeasures. Did that for about 6 years, and then went to Pax River, Maryland, and did test and development. We were trying to take the systems off the 53s, put them onto the 60s. And then eventually got picked up. And so I got picked up for a program. It's called Seaman to Admiral, Stay 21. And basically the Navy, you stay active duty. So I stayed as an E5 active duty, but my orders were to an actual NROTC unit. So they had kind of control and authority for me. And I mean, the story gets a little bumpy because I was selected to go down the pilot pipeline. They call it SNA, which is Student Naval Aviator. That was my track. I spent 3 years at the University of Maryland and going through the GW NRTC, but I had a business that bankrupted at the time, and it was a zombie infested 5K obstacle course race.
Whoa! So you were an entrepreneur during the military, like simultaneously.
There is not. Well, I guess this last company. No, I was on active duty orders even when I started Talent Harbor last year. There has not been a time that I've launched a company where I have not. It has not been a side hustle. Yeah, every company I've launched, I was active duty.
Man, for everyone listening that has a full-time job or they're enlisted in the military, a lot of people that listen, I think, are in that career transition space, which is why I love hearing stories like this. You can Side hustle for decades.
You can like, man, so that company bankrupted. I wound up getting a commissioning, not as a pilot, and we can talk about that too. But I just wanted to bring that point home. I went to San Diego. So I was going to University of Maryland. So we were in kind of that Maryland, DC area. Shipped to San Diego. First thing I did after bankruptcy was there was a startup event in San Diego. And so I went to the event, and there's this speaker up there, and he's like, "You're not a real entrepreneur if you still have a full-time job." And like, I waited for him to come off the stage, and I was like, "Hey, I like wholeheartedly disagree." And he was like, "Okay, but good luck getting funding. Good luck doing this. Good luck. Like, you need to be all in." That's the worst advice. Like, so many entrepreneurs could be sidelined with that advice. People still need to care and feed and provide shelter. Like, it is okay. The business that I launched, the second one, the first one that we were talking about, Run for Your Lives, that was 0 to about 8 million, 8.5 million. The second one I launched was 0 to 55 million. And I launched that while I was active duty. So like, yes, it can be done.
Whoa. Man. So you've launched one from 0 to 8. That was not the bankrupt one. This was a different one.
No, that was the bankrupt one. That one was
the bankrupt one.
Incredibly painful. Incredibly painful.
Yeah, I find that business growth, I did one from 0 to 10, not bankrupt, but I was burnt out to the degree of it just wasn't, whether it was the pace or whether it was the industry we're in or whatever it was that was about it. I was just like, I've always wanted to go fast and be a successful entrepreneur, and so be careful what you wish for. So what are some of the things you learned from that 0 to 8 bankruptcy? And how did you take those lessons to go from 0 to 55, which is a big jump?
That's what's interesting about all of that. Like, you're right. Like 0 to 10 million, you're going through so many inflection points. Like, most organizations or most companies out there, and when I say most, like all we see all day long in Fortune and Entrepreneur Magazine, we see all these like unicorns and 0 to $1 billion. Most companies never even see $1 million, and
it's like 90% or something.
Yeah. So the amount of change that an organization has to go through from 0 to 10, where most people don't experience that over decades, and you and I have experienced that over years. It's a lot of stress, and like that was it. And the lessons learned there were I couldn't spell P&L. So didn't know what a profit and loss statement was, didn't care. We ran the company based upon the bank account balance. And that's a not so smart thing to do when you're pre-collecting revenue. So in the event industry, you are selling tickets to a future event. And so if you are using the bank account, the cash balance to dictate how you're going to budget and how you're going to invest, it's terrible. So didn't understand finance, didn't have some sort of framework to operate the business, hired all my best friends, like just mistake after mistake after mistake. And I paid the price, like lost relationships out of it, went personally bankrupt because I was PG'd on almost everything in the company. But, what I told myself then was like, if I am ever, the hardest thing to do in business is find product market fit. And
of course, and it sounds like in order to go from 0 to 8, there was definitely there that obtains.
It was there. And like, I had this thing where I was like, that was my only shot. Like, I'm never going to experience this again. And it was a rough period. And the thing that I told myself was this: if I ever catch lightning in a bottle again, if I am ever lucky enough to find product market fit, like, we're going to do things different. And so the day-ish that we realized that Hunt a Killer was going to have true scale potential, went out, joined a Vistage group, separated from active duty service, got into the reserves, joined a Vistage group. We had an EOS implementer that came through, self-implemented EOS from like 0 to 10, and then went out and found an amazing implementer around that like 10, 15 million mark.
Right on.
Yeah.
I want to talk about EOS in a little bit, but also Vistage. I would say that of the two organizations that I've hitched my wagon to through my career that have been most helpful in terms of taking me from green, the FNG, the freaking new guy, to having some confidence and, at least secondhand experience or voices of reason have been Vistage and EOS. And it flip-flops the order. I don't know which one's more important. They're both very up there. What was it like when you joined Vistage? Like, how'd you get into it, and what were some of the benefits?
Yeah, I knew immediately that I needed to find something like that, because I would have made all new mistakes. Like, I would have known what not to do from, call it 0 to 8, but I knew that, like, if this were going to scale the way we thought it was going to scale, there was like a whole minefield of things that I had no idea how to resolve and how to grow. And so I started looking at different communities. I reached out to a buddy that was living in Maryland. We grew up. He has an amazing tinting business. And like he started out of his parents' garage when we were 16 tinting windows. And now he like tints the Dulles airport, all of the big windows. So like he has taken it to a whole new level. And I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I need to find like a tribe. I need a group of entrepreneurs that like can help me navigate some of these things that we're going to experience. He turned me on the Vistage. I had one of the best Vistage chairs. I've gone through 4 groups now. I'm still in Vistage out here in LA, but every time I've moved, I've transferred groups. But that's how I learned. And I was so stupid, like, cause I just got out of the Navy. And so I was like, I had worn boots for 15 years up to that point, every single day. And I was like, I'm just going to wear flip-flops. My first Vistage meeting, it was January in Annapolis at the Arundel Mills Mall. And I show up in flip-flops. And that was my welcome to this new group. So it was interesting.
Hey, rule number 1 of branding and marketing, be remembered. I guess they didn't forget that.
It got so bad that our PR person, Lindsay, amazing. She was able to get me on. Do you remember that Cheddar television show / like interview thing? It's called Cheddar. They did all their
sounds familiar.
Okay, they used to do all their interviews on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, and like everybody knew like my MO, and so like she reached out to me and was like, you cannot wear. They will not let you inside of the New York Stock Exchange with sandals. And so I think that was the only time that I wore shoes for the first time in like 3 years.
Where they explicitly forbid it.
Yeah, exactly. Like they would not even let me through the doors to get to the interview booth. So that was, yeah.
I want to make a mention about your friend with the window tinting. I feel like talking to, as someone that does like fractional CMO and talking to people that, they have to kind of set their sights of like where they want to go with their goal setting. And one of the problems I've had is not necessarily people having too small of or too big of goals. It's like too small of goals where they think this isn't scalable. I have to completely reinvent what I do, or I need to, SaaSify or AI leverage my business. And I'm like, random example, you have a painting company. What do you mean you have to SaaSify your business? What do you mean you have to tech forward your business? Like,
yeah,
but to your point, you can start in your mom's garage or basement and then go to one of the largest airports in the world and have them be a customer. It's like the idea of scaling, the market rewards your competence, and you only can scale insofar as you can acquire market demand. What are some thoughts of, the business of Hunt to Killer, and how did you know there was product market fit? And then once you got past that old threshold of 8 million, like how did you know that, all right, we're ready to rock, like EOS implementer, like we're not going to make the same mistakes twice and hit that velocity to really grow? I think a lot of people would benefit from hearing, because sometimes people get burned once, they just get afraid, like not do it again, and they play small.
Yeah, I like that whole adage of like do things that don't scale. I 100% agree with you. And that was some of my challenge coming out of the bankruptcy, because I was like, how will I ever grow another company to this size? Like, what's that big idea? The reality is business will grow as much as you want it to grow. Like once you're in, you can do whatever you want to do, and you just solve problem after problem. And like, if you're ambitious, you solve a lot of problems, and they're big problems. And so you always have kind of your eye towards scale and that ambition, but that's not how any business starts. And I agree with you. Like sometimes that becomes prohibitive for entrepreneurs that want to get in, or even prohibitive to growth, because they're like, I have this gigantic idea. And it's like, well, just solve this little pain point, or just go do something simple, because other opportunities start to appear as you're growing. Hunt to Killer is actually a great example of this, because with Run for Your Lives, we could put 15, I think the California event, SoCal, we had 18,000 people that we put through our obstacle course race on a Saturday or Sunday. And so we knew how to get to that type of throughput. When we launched Hunt to Killer, we did not know how to do that. And that actually became a major issue for the company in the early days, is because, we talk about 0 to 55 million. It was not a live event. The live event helped us understand product market fit. We sold out the first event. We had, I think, 600 people. We could have had more, but we had to cap it because we couldn't have thousands of people standing around a fake crime scene. And so every time you get a new data point, it's like, what do you do with that data point? And so immediately we were like, there's a demand that wants to be true detectives. And so like, how do we take this product market fit and turn it into a scalable business model? We looked at Loot Crate, Birchbox. We're like, we're going to stick all these items in a box. We're going to ship it out each month, and we're going to take the investigation right to front doorsteps. And that's the business line. It was like 0 to 100,000 with the event, and then 100,000 to 48 million with the subscription. And then we just kept growing because we started layering in retail distribution after that. But yeah, start small, think small, solve one problem, and then your ambitions will take you the rest of the way. But I agree with you.
Yeah, make sure that you're accurate before you try to be precise, because if you're not hitting bullseye, what's the point of raising funds for something that doesn't have product market fit? So like what you did was, hey, this works on this localized scale. We probably could get it to people's doorsteps. Then you could have distribution chains to more people's doorsteps but each of those, I think it's really important for those that are listening, is it's not Ryan further and further and further inserts himself as the face of the business and has to work more hours and sweat more. It's actually plays that help you to delegate, elevate, and leverage the strengths of other people and have decentralized involvement, which is probably one of the ways that you were able to be in the military for as long as you were and do these things as quote unquote side hustles, because it sounds like for me, at least in your story, that you never want to be like the star of the show, right? Not the main actor. You'd rather be the director or the producer to make sure the movie happens. And it's great.
You just nailed it. And it was almost a forcing function of having the active duty Navy, like you just said, like whether I wanted to or not, it forced me to not be in the day-to-day of the business. And I think that turned out to be a true strength. The other thing I see a lot is like entrepreneurs, their business becomes their identity. And where I think that starts to become restrictive is this idea of like, you can't pivot at that point. Like if your identity is the company itself, it becomes your baby. And when people say your baby's ugly, like you don't want to hear it. And you just keep forcing things that like people don't want. You're not solving a real problem. And so like I'm not an obstacle race designer. I'm not a game designer. To be frank, I'm not even a recruiter. Like my whole thing or superpower is being able to identify interesting opportunities or pain points and then pull the right folks together to help really solve and scale.
I want to touch on this comment of not a recruiter, because the newest business, the most recent business, is Talent Harbor.
Yeah.
And Talent Harbor, we talked about this offline. Recruiters suck. We fix that. That's kind of like your tagline. But what that says from a marketer is like, you just like identify the problem, identify the solution in 10 seconds, where you have people that try to have this whole thesis on like, hey, this is why you should invest in me. It's like, no, if you can say it in 10 words, it's probably one, memorable, but two, a lot of veracity to it, truth to it. So how did you get involved with Talent Harbor? Where did the idea come from? And how did you identify the opportunity?
Yeah, sold Hunt to Killer, and we ran a pretty traditional process with an investment bank. We were probably about 6 months into the process. We had 3 horses in the race. We knew at that point there was going to be some sort of transaction. And so, as you know, in Vistage, a part of being a part of the CE group is you get monthly coaching. And so my Vistage chair pulled me aside and he was like, hey, kid, the writing was on the wall. We knew there was going to be an exit. And he was like, hey, you're not going to be able to sit still. And so what I want you to do right now is go look at your P&L, pick your favorite line item, and go do that for a while. For me, it was people, the investment, development, coaching, mentoring, everything people related. But we spent about $1 million on recruiting. And like, I get it. Like the only thing business truly is fundamentally is the organization of people. You organize, you get everybody around whatever the vision is, and you get everybody rowing in the same direction. Bring smart, brilliant people together. Like that's business.
That's what EOS was founded on, the principle that you're optimizing human energy.
It's that easy. So I get how important both finding and retaining humans in the organization, because that is business. I don't understand why we're still using archaic models from World War II era. Like why the whole perception. It's funny because when I'm like recruiters suck, like a lot of people shake their head. Like everybody there, it's like the used car sales.
I think recruiters think that recruiters suck. I think they're like, my life sucks. Like I don't want to tell people what I do. I'll just say I'm in sales is probably what they would say.
Yeah. What's so interesting about that. So this is a secret between me, you, and your audience, but we spent about a year with my LinkedIn profile connecting with recruiters. And so like I've connected with probably about 1,000 recruiters over the last year. And it was just last Q4, so we could start. Can we cuss on this?
You can. I mean,
we'll say poo. We'll say poo poo. we did all of that so that we could start poo-pooing on recruiters, and like,
Mhm.
and they bit. So like, it was a whole thing of like, recruiters suck and this is why. And I put out like a P&L, like, here's a breakdown of what recruiters are actually making. And then like, they come out of the woodworks. And like, I would say exactly what you just said. I was like, I don't even tell people I'm a recruiter, because the first thing that happens is like, people cringe. And like, his response was like, that says more about you than it does recruiters. And I was like, dude, there very little self-awareness on like the industry you're playing in and what people actually think. So yeah, but we're changing that. We're changing that through transparency, through process, through business model. We're changing the game.
Yeah, I actually love that story for a couple of reasons. One, I can relate because I don't publicly say this while I'm rethinking some of the verbiage of my marketing messaging, but one of the main pain points, I worked for brands, I worked for marketing agencies, and as a CMO and having a portfolio of companies, we had to do a ton of hiring and firing of both in-house and outside help through agencies. Even the best marketing agencies, I could always find things, and I was like, this thing sucks. Like, I don't like this, or that about it. But I got really good at identifying, right fit, deals. That's one of the superpowers I think that I bring. To your point, like, if you don't have a deep, like, empirical data set of why you support the idea, like, then it's just a glitchy catchphrase that doesn't really stand a test. But because you've connected with 1,000 of them, underwent this research and came up with your own ideas, you just like became intimately familiar with the pain point, right? You're trying to solve.
Yep. Yep. That's exactly it. And we experienced that pain point. Like at Hunt to Killer, we spent $1 million on recruiting it. And I was like, this is the stupidest industry to ever exist. And it called Alana, because I think we were talking about this earlier. Like, I'm not necessarily a recruiter. Like, that's kind of a secret. Like, I'm not a recruiter. I'm not a game designer. I'm not an obstacle race designer. And so what I do is like find brilliant human beings who are world class and best at what they do, and bring them together to help us solve whatever issue. And that's what we've done. So like, with this one, I am kind of like the front person. So I do things like what we're doing right now, and meet incredible humans. And it's a help first approach. Like, I've learned so much, not because I'm super smart or because I read a lot. I do read, but like, it's because I experienced this. So when I come into an organization, like let's say I'm on a kickoff call or a discovery call, like, and I'm listening to their problems, like, we're trying to help. And whether they use us or not, great. Like, we can figure that out downstream. But really, our first premise is go-givers. That's our number one core value. So yeah,
It's a great book. I have it on my shelf right there. For those of you that haven't read it, the idea is that if you help enough people in your life without asking for anything in return, you'll get more than what the compound interest of altruism or of serving others or go out and giving is much better than if you're just transactional and you're like counting every line item in any social exchange or business exchange. People don't want to, I think that a good scorecard metric or KPI is how many people in a quarter, in a week, in a day, in a month, time period you want to say, have you helped? And sometimes that's saying, hey, I'm not the right person to help you with this problem based on what you told me. This person is.
Yeah. Yeah. I had, it's so funny you bring that up. I had a prospect call this morning, and we got about halfway into the conversation, and he told me what he was looking for. And I was like, listen, I'm not the best person for you, but this sounds interesting and sounds like a pain point from someone in my network that has already solved this. So why don't I connect you two? And like, I don't know. I feel like when people are so focused on like money and growth and like all these different things, like it's not sustainable. I don't think those are good goals. Like, if you just set a goal to like help as many people as you can, I just feel like the universe will repay you. But I just like it. And it makes me feel good. So
yeah, there's like a near-term intrinsic reward, like if you like helping people, which I do because I know that I wouldn't be anywhere in my life if people didn't help me when I needed it. And my whole thing is like I want to at the end of the day don't want to be in help debt, right? I would rather give more help than I've ever received, and I've received an awful lot.
yeah, it's the only reason I'm still in the Navy. Like, I've been in the Navy now 23 years. Could have like retired. Yeah, everybody retires at their 20-year mark. Like, for me, the Navy had such a monumental impact in my life. It helped take this like human that was like searching for purpose and meaning and all these other things, but like full of energy, and it helped me find direction and find kind of my own personal North Star. And that's the only reason I stay in today, is because like, if I can help a young 17, 18, 19-year-old, help them find their way, I don't know, that makes it all worth it. Because I'm definitely not staying in for the money or or anything like that. But yeah.
Yeah, I kind of a similar story, but much different because it's not military related. But I did quite a bit of volunteer coaching. I was a college wrestler, and then I got into like mixed martial arts, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, cage fighting as I got older. And then the older I
Nice.
got, the more that the ROI was not positive in my favor for like getting hit in the head and injuries, things like that. So I was like, how do I stay involved? Coaching was one way. I was helping out a guy who's maybe 20, 21 at the time, brand new, and he was right around my size. So it was, good thing. Gave him a lot of attention. And he was just like, I'm fed up with my business. I'm fed up with my job. I want to start a business. I was like, all right, well, here's the steps you have to take. He listened, started a business within a month. Within 6 months, was doing 10 plus K. Then he got up to like almost 20K of revenue within
Yep.
like a period of time. And he was still showing up to class and getting better. I was like, hey, you're in business. I need your help. Like, help me run my podcast. So like whenever I got my first help of professional help was from him. So
Yep.
shout out to Nathan. But then, life happened. He's 21 now, starting to make money in business, has to go do his own thing. Kind of went different ways. I don't coach anymore. Don't really have the bandwidth to do so. I get a Snapchat video message from him, tells me a story, and it's like the most reward. I could have closed a big client contract that same day, and I would remember this story more than the signature, like the money. He's like, man, one of my old coworkers, this construction company, who we'd always butted heads, and he'd always bully me. I was younger, and he was my supervisor. Now I'm a contractor for him. We had a company event, and he challenged me to a fight after he had a couple drinks, and I took him down, full mounted him, and choked him out in front of his kids. I'll never forget. This is like the best day of my life. He's like, thank you, or else I would never be able to do that. And I'm like, I don't think about him often because we don't stay in touch. I still follow, but I'm like, that story gives me so much joy that I helped
Yeah.
and there's no financial transaction, but if you can compound that and do it for business, like do
Yep.
it, capture that. That's the lightning in a bottle I want to capture in business.
Yeah, that I got. It was probably about 3 months ago. I got a Signal message, and we use Signal for a lot of things in the Navy. And I get a Signal message, random DM from a young sailor, probably like 3 or 4 years ago, and he was asking about commissioning programs. He's asking about this, asked about that, and like just kind of helped him. And like he sent me, I think he like just checked into school and just got a commission. He sent me a picture, and like again, we've lost touch, and so like I have many conversations with many sailors where I'm always trying to help. But man, that made my whole week of just hearing about the success that he's had. And he's like, I owe this all to you. And I was like, really, you owe it all to yourself.
Right.
All I was doing was just kind of giving you some wisdom that I had experienced. But you're right. There's nothing that compares to those types of messages.
So translating that with Talent Harbor, what are some of the ways that you've helped out companies like the one that you had with Honey Killer, who
Yeah.
experienced pain points of just recruiting that was busted for whatever reason? What are some of the ways that Talent Harbor captures that feeling in a bottle and shares it?
Yeah, that's what's really interesting about that is this kind of goes back to EOS. So the hardest thing to do in hiring is not understanding, do they have the experience and expertise? Anybody out there, AI today can do it, but anybody out there can look at a resume and say, okay, they were in a similar industry, similar size companies, took it from this place to this place. You ask some questions around that. You want some details out of that, but you can call a reference or two and see if all of that stuff validates. The easiest thing to do is hire somebody for experience and expertise. The hardest thing to do is hire someone that's going to be a good culture fit, because every organization has a different culture. And one of the things that we do is like, if a company is not running on EOS, which I would say 80 to 85% of our companies do, even some of our outbound campaigns, even the companies that we attract, they also run on EOS. But if they don't run on EOS, like we will run them through a core values exercise. And the reason for that, and we don't put a charge on it or anything like that. We do that because what we're communicating to them is you can't even, as in like the entity, the company, the leadership, the hiring manager, no one can find the right person for the role that they think they need if you don't understand the core behaviors inside of the organization. So like one example there is like 3 weeks ago, I flew to Houston. This was for a buddy, granted. But 3 weeks ago, I flew to Houston on like 3 days notice and ran them through a whole day session, because like we can't do good work for them if they don't have some of these things already identified. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting too, because from a marketing perspective, there's a lot of similarities between HR recruiting and marketing and lead gen. It's just that instead of trying to make deals and sell the company to a potential customer, it's to a potential employee, but both
Yeah.
of them are essential for the lifeblood of your business. And both of them, there's like this back and forth attraction, like, does it fit or not fit? Here's the deal, here's the terms. And you're right. One of the things that I've taken from EOS and from experience in marketing is, like, if I have to work with a company on like a brand campaign, or how to do messaging or do some sort of branding, the first line of questioning is always like, all right, what do you think it is? Core
Yeah.
values. Like, what do you think your brand is? Like, what do you think your brand value is, your core values? And now does does the evidence say? Like, what does the market say?
Yep.
And if you say you're this way, but everyone else says you're the opposite way, then you have schizophrenic core values. We got to get on the line. We got to fix that.
Yep.
Or else nothing that we do from a marketing is going to help you. Sure. I mean, you might get, you can only put so much lipstick on a pig. So let's just, hey, if you're a pig, let's just roll around in the mud, and then you'll attract more pigs.
Yeah. That's 100%. Like, it's so funny. You just made the correlation between like sales and marketing and recruiting. And we talk about this constantly internally, because like, that's what recruiting is. And it's almost like bringing in cold prospects, because the best recruiting is a core competency. And I think that's what a lot of people get wrong, is like, you have a hiring manager, and that hiring manager is a leader of the marketing team or a leader of the operations team. They have spent the last, call it 20 years, like understanding operations or understanding marketing. That's not recruiting. Like, a good recruiter has spent decades like honing the craft of recruiting. And one of the things that folks miss is like, recruiting is not posting a job description to some job board and looking at hundreds, if not thousands of resumes. Like, that's not recruiting. Recruiting is identifying what you need and then going out and finding them.
Right.
And
Because some
yeah,
often of the time, sorry to interrupt you, but those
yeah.
people may not be looking for a job right now. Right.
100%. Like, and we have found this like weird niche in sales, which is incredible, because we're doing a lot of great work for a lot of great clients. And the best salespeople are not spending their day on job boards. The best salespeople are selling, and they're getting well compensated. And like, that's the reality of the situation. And so recruiting is sales, because when we reach out to somebody that's not looking, their time is valuable. And so we now have to convince them to go through this long, arduous process with us, keep them excited through that process, and then give their information to the client, and the client has to run their own process. But it's cold calling. It's putting together marketing materials to help sell the vision, sell the opportunity. Recruiting is 100% sales.
I think sales is arguably the most important skill tree to develop for an entrepreneur, because I
Yeah.
could also riff on and say, in a lot of ways, marketing is just an extension of sales, because sales, I like to define as to help to make a decision.
Mhm.
A good salesperson, if they come with a help first mindset, like, yes, sometimes the best way I can help you is if you decide to sign this dotted line and buy this product or service for what you have needs. But like, a marketer's job, I think, is just to help them make a decision on whether or not to pay attention, whether or not to be interested in this information, to be educated or entertained or to be informed. Like, I'm not trying to get you to transact business as a marketer. I'm trying to capture lightning in a bottle and get your attention, so that when you do make a decision, whether it's with our company or not, you are informed. Like, I think
Yeah.
marketing is to make aware. I think sales is to help decide.
Yep. That's like, listen, every team inside of an organization, and you're obviously familiar with EOS, so like the core functions, the three basic core functions: operations, finance, sales, and marketing. And this, I try not to take this approach, or I at least try not to like make it seem like this is the end all be all. But without sales and marketing, there is no organization. And like, I get it. We need operations. We need all these things. We need most of those things after the fact. After we have found product market fit, after we have sold some things, after we have found traction, then all of these things layer in. And then other areas become more important. But I agree with you, to be an entrepreneur, to get good ideas off the ground, to listen to the market signals, and then being able to iterate your way to a better business or better business model, it's sales and marketing up front. Once you're there, we need to watch the books, because I've missed out on that. You need to have a tight operations. I've been educated in that through the hard knocks, but yeah, sales and marketing is a critical skill.
I can only laugh because I can relate to one of the stories you mentioned about your first business venture, where you hired almost exclusively friends and family. Talked to at my Vistage chair as well, my coach, and he goes, it starts to get on his nerves after a while, I'm like, all right, hold on, let's unpack this. Boss, at best, everyone else I've coached, 10% of the time, when it's their friends or family, they're bringing in the business to hire them. It works out. He goes, 10% of the time is like, you're doing great when you do that. He goes, the best recruiters in the world, or the best, HR companies in the world, have like a 50% of like success rate for intake. But you're 5x below the bar of what you should be shooting for. And he was right. Like I did hire 10 people that were my friends or family. I burned half those relationships are just beyond salvageable repair. And it's just the unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, I wish I'd known that sooner. Thank you, Vistage.
Yeah. 100%. And I was just talking to a friend about this last week, and he was like, yeah, I'm gonna hire, I forget, someone in this family. And like my question is always like, why risk it? Like, why put that relationship at risk? Like, I get it. There's an opportunity. And this doesn't happen much anymore, but like when Run for Your Life started to get a lot of traction, I would have a lot of people in my network reaching out being like, hey, I'd love a job. Hey, if we can like figure some of these things out. By network, I mean like friends that I grew up with. And it's tough, man. It's tough. And like you, probably 50% of those relationships are gone at this point. Cause like most don't understand. And even Derek. So Derek and I, who was my original co-founder and then co-founder of Hunt to Killer, our relationship went through like very traumatic experiences. Like we went through bankruptcy together, both of us personally. He had already left the company at that point because I had to get in and help try and get it on the right path. But he understood, right? Like when that stuff happened, like he saw the big picture, he understood. Most people don't. Most people take it very personally, and it's never personal. It's like, this isn't working. Here's why it's not working.
It goes back to the lesson you mentioned about not having your brand be your ego, not having a 1-1 correlation. Because when you can detach from, who Ryan or Ross are outside of the business, then it's just business. Then you can be objective and non-emotional and not have it be like someone's insulting your child. It's like, no, they're trying to guide you and give you a signal to adjust and course correct. It's more like, if you treat it more like a vehicle than like an offspring for a business, like, yeah, sure, you want to make sure your car's washed and clean and presentable, but it's not like you're worried about your child having their self-esteem crushed.
Yeah. Man, I talk about that. It's so funny you just said that. I always talk about like business as a vehicle. Most people don't start businesses to like do actual business. They don't start a business to like work 12 hours a day for the rest of their lives. They start a business because they're trying to achieve something. And for some reason, like confusion starts, and like they start becoming the business. And that is problematic. Even in EOS, like if you can't elevate and delegate, if you can't get out of the way of the people that you brought in to help execute on that vision, you actually become a roadblock for the entire organization. So
yeah, and that's why taking directionally appropriate steps, it's like one thing that I've learned going from 0 to 10 in 3 years, whatever it was, and it was not linear.
That's wild. That is crazy growth.
It was not linear. But one thing I learned was like, it's better to go slow and not have to worry about, like, if I'm on the interstate highway, for example, I'm going to you plot the same destination, the GPS. If you go 110 miles an hour and everyone else is going 70, you might get there faster, but they'll also increase the likelihood that you're going to crash, get a speeding ticket. And the passengers along the ride are like, whoa, slow down. What are you doing? You're crazy. So like treat it like you're, just going from point A to point B, and you can go anywhere, but it's like the ride. Love the ride. How about it?
Yeah. That's, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's just like in your and I's nature and your and I's personality. Like, and I'll give you a story. I was the XO of a unit, and I was fired from the role. And like, I kind of knew it was coming. And because like, I have self-awareness. Like I know when I'm doing good things, and I know when like I'm not carrying the load. And the issue that I had in this unit was like, I think it was Hunt to Killer at the time. Like Hunt to Killer was going through just insane things. It was during the pandemic. And so it was like trying to keep up with like, what are Maryland regulations right now? Do we have to shut down the warehouse? What's customer acquisition costs? Like everything was just on fire. And so my responsibility between drill weekends was lacking severely. And so I knew that like there was going to be a conversation, but it was no like ego or no no like pride hit. Like I was failing to meet the expectations. I knew why I just didn't have the capacity. But some people just get so rolled up, and it's everywhere. Like, we're talking about business. We're saying don't let your business become your identity. People let their positions become their identity. And that's when weird stuff happens.
Yeah, man. I can't agree with you more. I think that getting those experiences out of your system though, like entering the danger, confronting the issue. Because if you don't confront that and you don't make that epiphany bridge, it doesn't get better with time, right? Like you're not gonna wake up, be 70 years old, be like, I'm never gonna retire because this is my role. Let's just say I'm a accounting manager at a firm and like this is like who I am. It's like you're not an entrepreneur and like you could have retired 5 years ago,
Yeah.
but like it doesn't get better. I don't know. I'm just lucky that similar to you, like I was moonlighting as a cage fighter while I was working in a tech startup.
That's
So
wild.
I learned like 60 hours a week in a tech startup where it was like 7 employees. Everyone's like under 35 or 32 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're going to the moon. And then I'm like, I'm in a cage fighter. Like, what the heck? And
You like come in with a black eye next day.
yeah, like, why are you walking with a limp? I was like, I got kicked really hard. And I eventually got to a point where it was like unsustainable to try and do both. And I was like, I'm going to go all in cage fighting. Like Conor McGregor's, getting famous. I can do this too.
Yeah.
And what I learned about that was because I got so much like positive reinforcement from like friends and family. Like it was, looking back, it was hilarious, like how inflated my ego was at the time, but I look back, I'm like, thank goodness I lost a fight and got knocked out in training and I stopped. Or else who I would have been as a person would have gone through this serious like ego death of like that identity's gone, because you meet people that are through hundreds of concussions. They can't even talk and they still, I'm going to get back in the ring. It's like, you should have hung it up 90 concussions ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, is it because we like, that might be interesting. Like we've lived through like some traumatic experiences. Like maybe my identity in the early days was attached to it. Like I'd have to think about that, but that's what's interesting about what you just said there is like that created that disassociation at that point. And for me, it might've been Run for Your Lives, where it was like, that's the last time I'll ever do this again. And this is just a vehicle, but maybe it takes a moment like that to really understand this isn't life.
At least for people like us, because I think one of the hardest skills, if you're going to GWC a seat for an entrepreneur, whether your ambition is to have a lifestyle business where you make a couple $100,000 a year of top line and have, a good life, or whether you want to make $100 million or $1 billion year startup, whatever it is, it's like you have to have a certain risk tolerance and a propensity towards action. For you, who can balance military career and entrepreneurship, like obviously propensity towards action, obviously you've shown risk tolerance because you've risked it all and did it again. And by going through that bankruptcy, you probably realize, all right, well, now I have a new frame of what's the worst that could happen. Yeah. And it knocks the fear straight out of it.
Yep.
In a way, yep. If you let it.
%. And that's like the interesting part about business is like all too often we get trapped in this idea that like it's life or death. Like this decision is life or death. This problem is life or death. And I will tell you very, very, very rarely is it truly ever life or death. I could give you some stories of like Hunt a Killer. We went way up and then it started to come down and we had another business line that was coming up, but the business line that was contracting was like sucking out a lot of cash. And the business line that was growing was very capital intensive as well. Like we had so many near-death experiences. But I say that in retrospect because the reality is like every time we thought like it couldn't get worse, it would get worse. And it'd be like, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, we're okay. Like we're still flying. Like we'll figure this out. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to segue into my favorite part of the show, which is leave a question, ask a question. I don't normally dox the person who I interviewed last. Yeah. But because I'm not telling you who I'm interviewing next, so it doesn't really take the thunder out of your question. But a guy was Chris White. He was one of the original EOS implementers. Like he was like EOS implementer like number 18 or something.
Yeah, I know Whitey.
Oh, awesome. So Chris.
Yep.
This is his question, and it's like so hilariously fitting for our conversation. His question is, do you have identity clarity? Do you have priority clarity? And do you have directional clarity in your life, and what are they? And I think that was the bulk of what our theme of the show was, at least around identity and priority and direction. And I didn't form any of the conversational tracks around it, but yeah, Chris has that question for you.
Yeah, that seems like a loaded question, and there's a lot of questions. As soon as we hang up, I'm going to text Chris and say thanks for the question. That was a mouthful. Yeah, I do feel like it, but it's taken years and years and years, and like there's this constant impatience that I've had throughout life of like, got to do it now, gotta make it now, got to do all these things, and we put all these like artificial pressures on ourselves, and it's like there's these moments that create space and clarity and calmness and stillness and all these things that we need to be able to like recharge and start to think more deeply about the questions that you just asked. So I don't know if it was a yes or no question, but I would just say yes to all three. But that's only because of where I'm at today. 10 years ago, it would have probably been no. And then I would have looked Chris up on LinkedIn and said, hey, can you come help me find these three things?
Too funny. Now, Ryan, yeah. So now the question is for the next guest. And what question would that be?
Yeah. So my question for the next guest, which is only one question, not three questions, Chris, is who? It's going to be two questions. All right. Sorry. Who has had the biggest impact in your life and why?
Perfect. Can I field that question back to you?
Is that what you're? Is that, man? You were like, hey, think
It's
of a
completely
question.
unfair, but
Yeah.
we don't play fair here.
God, there are so many. Gosh, it's a tough question. I didn't even consider
can I
the
answer? Can I
consequences.
answer mine for you?
Yeah, go yours and then I'll go mine.
It's my daughter. It's
Yeah.
the transition from being, living for myself to having someone that I've got to take care of, or else they're, what are they going to do? That one's easy for me. I have one child. Completely made everything. That was like the single day where I was like, well, yesterday is not going to be like tomorrow. That's for sure.
That's a good one. I have four, so if I mention one, then I'm in big trouble with the other three.
You can't show favoritism.
Yeah. I'll just go like earlier in life, and I'll go with my mom on this one because I think that really kind of shaped who I was. It's very hard as you like grow and mature to change like your core being, your beliefs, your thoughts, your all of these different things that are really formed when we're much younger. And I think the one thing that my mother and my grandfather too is like they instilled a certain sense of values that has carried with me. And so not that like I think we're all wired the way that we're wired. And so our personalities are their personalities, but people's upbringings impact like the lens in which they see life. And I think that I've always seen life as an opportunity and optimistic and positive. And I think that's because of some of the early stuff with her.
Right on. Last question, not deep at all. Where can people learn more about you, Alan Harbor? How can they connect and get in touch?
Yeah. So it goes back to our original point of like go-givers, love helping. So like it doesn't have to be talent related. You don't have to want my services or anything like that. Like you can just be like, hey, I have this business problem because I just love jamming on this stuff. So the easiest way is to go to talentharbor.com/Ryan, RYAN. And there is like my personal email. There is my LinkedIn. I'm on, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm on there constantly and poop posting all over the industry and things like that. So I check my DMs frequently. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. And everyone, thank you for listening. Don't run ads in the show. Don't plan to. Only ask, as always, is to share it with a friend. The gift that keeps on giving. Till next time, be well.